So today I'm going to be giving you an update on Snip and her latest vet visit. So I'm going to go through a quick recap of what's happened with Snip, what we've basically been doing for the last 9 months. But if you already know that and you followed our journey, then head down to the bottom and there'll be timestamps for you to skip those sections if you want to. So for anyone who doesn't know, I bought Snip at the end of last year, almost an entire year ago now. So I bought Snip to event. So when I tried her, we jumped and she had a lovely forward and beautiful jump. She was still rather green and I could see that she really needed to build muscle, especially on her hind end. But the jump was there, the confidence was there, and more importantly than anything, she was just a lovely, lovely mare. So we had her 5-stage vetted and she passed that and she came home. And then for the next 3 months, we worked almost completely on her flat work and introducing her to new environments and just getting to know each other, but mostly trying to build up her hind end and those muscles and just trying to get to use her hocks. And we always kind of knew that this was something that she really needed to build on. I think even in my introductory video, I literally say that she needs to build that hind end up. And then in December, actually on Christmas Eve, the day I jumped Snip, and we'd done a little bit of jumping up to them, and she'd been booking quite a bit, but I'd actually been in touch with the previous owner, so not the one I bought her off, but the one who'd had her previously, and she said, oh, she always books when she jumps, which is very much not what her advert said at all. It said never books, never rears, and she definitely does. But anyway, so I was like, okay, it's just an excitement thing. But then when we jumped on Christmas Eve, we actually had the video in slow-mo and we noticed that she hopped after one of the jumps. She was never fully lame, but she always had something I couldn't quite put my finger on. So I booked her into the vet for a full workup, and that actually happened on the 28th of December. So during the exam, Snip was lunged on hard ground and soft ground, and the vets agreed that her gait was off and she wasn't pushing through properly on her hind end, especially her right hind. So then they nerve blocked her and they x-rayed and ultrasounded, and the vets found that Snip's hind suspensory ligaments were inflamed and thickened. Luckily, there were no tears or holes. So the vet gave us a few options, but we opted for double hind suspensory surgery as this gave Snip the best chance of a full recovery. All the other options were kind of, we can try this, but we're not sure it'll work, and you could do this. And surgery we knew was going to be quite expensive, and definitely long term. Like they did say, it'll be at least 6 months before she's in proper work and everything. And we had brought her to event this year, but I just wanted to get her right, so we opted for the surgery. They did also find her SI was very sore and she was struggling in the right hock, but suspected that these were actually secondary to her suspensory issues, just because of when there's something wrong with the horse, something secondary goes because they try and compensate for it because they're such a stoic animal. So fast forward to January 16th and Snip went in for surgery at Hirds and Partners in Halifax. Luckily the surgery went very well. The vet said it had been very straightforward and Snip recovered from the anaesthetic fine. She came round really well, and it's only a very small incision, but obviously with any surgery with horses especially, there's always the chance of things going wrong. But then 48 hours later I got the call to say she could come home and that she could start her month of box rest. Now, unfortunately, as is common in horses post-surgery, Snip actually colicked 2 days later when she was at home, and we really did think that we were going to lose her to the colic. I found her and rang the vet straight away, and Hirds and Partners have been incredible throughout this entire experience. They came out and they really quickly checked her over and rectalled her and found that her intestine had been displaced. So she was rushed back to the vets. And she very nearly had to go for colic surgery, but we were really trying to avoid surgery because obviously she just had one surgery, but then obviously we didn't want to lose her, so we were very much like every hour the vet was practically calling me to say, this is where we're at, because it was so touch and go. But then after 5 very long days of intensive care, she pulled through and could return home again. So then she came back to a month of box rest, which was very hard. She was on complete box rest for the entire month. And then after the month of literally only leaving the stable to be mucked out, she was able to start walking in hand initially. We built this up very, very slowly over 2 weeks, and then she was allowed to be turned out into a very small paddock, like literally the size of her stable. And again, we had to slowly build this up and could move the electric fencing gradually. I was so lucky that Snip is such a level-headed mare and that she takes everything in her stride, because otherwise I think none of my other horses would actually have coped with the box rest. Then we were allowed to do some in-hand walks and long reining, which seemed to go on for forever. But we had to rebuild her strength without having a rider on top. So it wasn't actually until April, another 4 months, until she had her second vet checkup and we got the all clear to start ridden work, but strictly hacking in walk and in straight lines, which is really difficult when your mare hasn't been ridden for 4 months. And while Snip is a sloth on the ground, when you get on her back, she becomes a chestnut mare. So yeah, those hacks were very interesting, and I used to make my friends come and hold me on the lunge line because we just never knew what she was going to do. But she seemed to be doing really well under the saddle for the first month, but then in May we started trot work and she showed signs of discomfort. Like when I was just getting on her, she'd move away from the mounting block, or I'd put her in trot and she just didn't feel quite right. But then I'd not ridden her in like 5 months, or 6 months properly, so I wasn't sure whether it was me or anything. But I always say in these situations, listen to your gut. So I took her back to the vets for her second checkup, and the vets advised medicating her SI and her hocks as she was showing signs of discomfort. So the injections meant that after a week off work she could start more hacking, and that we could really build up the muscle then around the joints to support them. So the idea was, because she was weak around them, that's why they were becoming sore. So we need to really build up that muscle. And she also started going for her water treadmill sessions once a week. So then another month later, and in June, we were allowed to start ridden work in the school. This was a very interesting time. Every time I asked her for trot initially, it came with Snip's signature move, which is her big old broncs, and that went on for about 2 weeks. But then I actually moved her to my parents' farm away from the livery, which was the best thing I've ever done for her. And it just enabled us to really start schooling properly. And we really rebuilt her like she was a just broken 4-year-old. We took it straight back to long reining and then getting on and doing really basic asks of her. And we kind of found a lot of it was to do with Snip's confidence as well. So I have purposely taken it slowly to give Snip the time to rebuild and re-strengthen. We actually only started canter at the end of July, and this is something we're very much still working on, mainly on Snip's confidence, balance. We had to overcome the fact that she remembers that this used to be painful, so she tenses and expects the pain, but she's building up very well, and actually her schooling now is amazing in walk and trot. It's so much better than she ever was when I actually first got her last year, which brings us to this week. We now got to the point where she was going nice on the saddle, especially in a walk and a trot. She was really using herself, working in an outline, moving freely, going up to the bit. And the vet said, when you feel her canters coming along, come back for us to check her. And this was kind of the really big moment for me. This was kind of, we either find out if we need a hocks re-injecting, if we need to go backwards in rehab and she needs to strengthen more, or if we basically get the go-ahead to go into full work, start competing and enjoying ourselves, and even start jumping. So we took Snip to the vets on Monday, and I was so nervous. I don't think I've ever been nervous. I have sat in vets car parks so many times and cried my eyes out that I thought, do you know what? Just go with an open mind. And they lunged her and she was looking pretty well, but she was like looking all around her, and I was like, Snip, just look where you're putting your legs, please. And then they lunged her on the hard ground and then said, right, go get your tack, I want to see you on her. So I jumped on, and she actually went beautifully. I put her into a canter and she did holler a bit, but then she finally relaxed, and the vet turned around to me and said, she is looking amazing, and whatever you've done it well. She was really happy with how slowly we've taken it. She said her muscle progression, her strength was a lot further ahead than what they actually expected her to be at this stage, and that we got the all clear so that we can start competing and we can start jumping at some point when I feel she's ready. And it was just the best news ever. Oh gosh, it actually makes me very emotional to talk about, because we have worked since January towards this, and I have put so much into her in her rehabbing and everything, and there have been some real lows when we thought we'd lose her, but we didn't. And we are going to our first dressage competition in a couple of weeks. I still want to focus on really strengthening that canter and making sure she's completely balanced in the canter before I put her over a cross pole. We will be jumping her, but when we start jumping her, I will be treating her like she's never jumped in her life. Basically what we did with flat work, so when she came back into flat work, I treated her like she'd never been broken. We started from the very basics, and we're going to do that with her jumping. I'm now working towards longevity. I want to be riding this mare for years and years to come, and I want her to be as comfortable as possible for years and years to come. So we are slowly building her. I am nervous about jumping her because she loves jumping, and I think she may throw some shapes, but it's nothing she's not thrown at me already. And yeah, so we will start with like tiny cross poles, lots and lots of grid work like you would a youngster, and basically teaching her how to jump again, and building her confidence up as well, because a lot of this has been the memory of the fact that it used to hurt with Snip, and she's a chestnut mare, she's very opinionated, so we need to just make sure she's balanced so that when she does give her opinion, she's in a nice calm environment and that she's balanced. So yeah, it was fantastic news from the vet. I am over the moon to say that Snippy has got the all clear, that we are moving forwards with everything, with our dressage, and that at some point soon, within the next month or so, you may see me actually over a jump. Would you believe? I think it's just been way too long since I jumped her. I've really missed it, but I just didn't want to rush anything. We have taken so much care, and I just want to say a massive thank you to Hirds, because they have been incredible with her, and to my physio Michelle for constantly coming out when I'm like, just check she's not tight here, and just do this and just do that, and also to all of my amazing sponsors who have supported me throughout this. I cannot wait for you guys to see what we have coming up, and I think I've got a very special mare who will really do something next year. So lots of exciting things. Thank you so much for your guys' support as well. And yeah, I will see you all soon for another Snippy video. Bye guys.